What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. So excited to have you joining us wherever you're watching from. Today, I'm so excited to have a very special guest on. I believe that I have known this individual, I think, for about 5 years. And I've got to watch the journey of his life, and he's honestly got to watch mine as well. And he's an incredible man of God. He serves in our church in so many capacities. He's a light and a joy. If everyone wants to welcome Thomas
Hey,
to the podcast. What's up, Thomas? How are you?
hey, I'm doing good. This
Thanks so
is this
much.
is we-
Thanks so much for being here, dude, and for
yeah,
being a part and talking. This is gonna be fun.
yeah, for sure. Like this is weird for me. I've never been on anybody else's podcast, and like this is good weird for sure.
There we go, dude. How's it been 5 years that we've known each other? Right?
I think we probably started going to Amplify around the same time. I,
2019.
yep.
Yeah, crazy, dude. So 5 years we've known each other. Now here we are doing this podcast together, and you and I met a couple weeks ago. I guess at this point it's been a couple weeks, and we just sat down and we were catching up on life and all the things. And we're gonna get a little bit into your journey, but I just thought, man, it would be so cool to have you on to talk through the journey of life that you're in, and we'll get to that in a minute. So everybody,
Mhm.
hold tight. But for those of the listeners who may not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Thomas? What's your deal, man?
Yeah. Well, man. I'm always on the other side of this. It's fun. Um, but no. I'll say from the offset, like I'm a man after God's own heart.
Hmm.
Trying to figure out what he loves, what he hates, and try to live my life as aligned with that as I can.
Yeah.
But there's then a little bit of backstory. I grew up in just Ligonier, Pennsylvania, about like an hour away from where I'm at now.
Yeah.
Got four
Beautiful town, by
sisters.
the way.
Yeah, it's
Beautiful town.
great.
Yeah. Four
uh,
sisters.
yeah, I got four sisters, three younger, one older, who just had a little baby. So I have a nephew now.
Hmm.
Um, and I'm also a huge nerd, massive, huge nerd. I love tech. It's the best. I love AI. It's fun. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Things I
I'm a,
don't get. This is two worlds colliding.
yeah. And then for by trade, I'm a web and mobile app. Web and mobile app developer. That's been doing that for the last 7-ish years.
Yeah.
At the company I'm at now, and by passion, I'd say I'm a striving life coach, or what I'm eventually going to call it, calling coach.
Oh, I
Um,
love that. Tell us a little bit about that.
yeah. So as backstory, I did a little. I there's a lot there, so I'm going to try to try to like condense it a little bit. But
Yeah.
there's calling essentially like it's going to be the same purpose as I have for the podcast. It's to provide people the tools they need to successfully discover and pursue their God-given calling.
I love that.
And so yeah, that's going to be about providing people with that feel that know they have a calling on their lives and have a little bit of a maybe a little bit more of a drive than the person
Hmm.
next to them,
Yeah.
and they providing them with the tools, techniques, mindsets, and um, practices, accountability to be able to pursue the calling well.
That is so cool, dude. You mentioned the podcast, and I was going to bring that up
Yep.
later, but let's just talk about it now. For those of you who
Sure.
may not know, Thomas hosts a podcast of his own that's amazing. I think I'm the number one listener, number one fan. I'm sure you have many, but I like to claim that spot. And so recently, you actually had a rebranding, relatively
Yep.
recently. And so why don't you tell people? I'd love for you to talk about maybe the start of the podcast and the
Mhm.
journey and why the new name, why the rebrand, and where people can follow.
Sure. Yeah. So the original podcast, I have the shirt on, was called Technically Short, and that was with my roommate, a good friend of both of ours, Sean Short.
Yeah. Shout
The
out
name came,
Sean.
Sean. He's out in Europe right now in the army. It's cool. Uh,
That's crazy.
I know. And but the name came out of just both of our names. It was just supposed to kind of be something we did together, and for a little bit, and it was my initials are TEC, Thomas Edward Carney, and then his last name is Short, so that's why I came up with the name, technically Short.
Yeah.
And we kind of just well, we didn't come up with the idea on our own. I'll say that first. It wasn't us.
Yeah.
that came that
Yeah.
for initially, I think it was Pastor Ed that first came up with the idea. Well, he first wanted the idea just for like a comedy, something he could laugh at,
Yeah.
and
I
and
don't know how you should take that, Thomas.
I mean, we were eating lunch together in his office, and he was like, "You and Sean could literally talk about anything because we're so different
Okay. Yep.
that
Yep.
that it would be entertaining."
It was
Yeah.
incredibly entertaining and funny. You guys are hilarious. Yeah.
I think the favorite one was definitely the relationship podcast. I think that
That was fun. Yep, that was a good one.
And yeah, and then another person actually said it, told me at a separate time that I should start a podcast with Michelle Croyle. Meg Croyle's mom, who you had on the podcast at least a couple times, right?
Yeah.
And she did like a little free coaching session with me because she coaches people as part as her and her husband do, and and we just I think we just did a little free coaching session, and I mentioned like what my goals were, and she said she was like, yeah, you should start a podcast, get yourself out there a little bit more, and I was like, okay, maybe, and and they've been kind of wanting to, and then eventually, like it was like still months later when Sean and I eventually were just like decided to dive in because Sean was ready to dive in from the get-go. He's like, yeah, let's do it.
Of course.
Head first, and I'm like, okay, let me think a little bit more.
Yeah, for those of you who may not know, Thomas was 100% the planner, executor, and Sean was like the spontaneous, let's just do it. It was a very funny combination. Yes. Okay.
But
so that's now, kind of the journey of the beginning. So then how'd you end up here? With the new name and all that.
Yeah, so whenever Sean left, like you just already mentioned, when Sean went to the army, left for the army, we talked initially about possibly me rebranding or starting a different podcast altogether.
Yeah,
and he was perfectly fine with it, and I felt weird with it about it at first, but but I was thinking about it for a bit after he left, and I kept the name solo. And then one time, Michelle Croyle invited me onto a open house Zoom call with to this guy's group called John Stongi, and him and Don Marasco are members of his online platform. He's a lead pastor at Core Creek Church, and he has a platform called Platform Launchers. And he has 4 podcasts, 3 faith-filled, and one's entrepreneurial mixed with his faith. And I was there, and I was able to ask him some questions about what my goals were, and told him the name of the podcast. It was technically short, and he's like, the whole time you were talking, I was trying to figure out what that podcast was about. And he's like, because the only thing I could think about was like maybe it was like short form content about tech. And and I was like, that's a good point. And I was like, so he's like, and his the info that he gave me was you want to make your brand around something that whenever people see it for the first time, they know what it's about. And they see your podcast, whenever they see your podcast, like if they just see the artwork, they get at least a little bit of an idea what they're getting into. So then I started brainstorming, and the Pursuit of Calling came out of that. Cause we already had like for technically short, that was kind of the name, the kind of underlying like subtitle or whatever of technically short was to provide people with the tools. And I was like, and I used AI for a little bit of help. And
of course, you're a tech guy. You're a tech guy,
right? And then I like went but yeah, I got some crowd opinions, asked around after I got some names together, and the Pursuit of Calling came out of that, and I honestly love it. I think it's that whole purpose of the podcast is it's me pursuing my calling.
Hmm.
So it's also while I'm pursuing my calling, it gives me the ability to help other people pursue theirs. So
That's so
that's what.
amazing. Yeah. And I love it a lot, obviously. I think it's a great podcast. I listen on Spotify because I'm a Spotify guy,
Yep.
but you're also on Apple Music
Yep.
and basically any podcast platform, correct?
Everywhere, literally everywhere.
Yeah.
So,
S-
so
so you just type in
anywhere.
Pursuit of Calling and you'll find
Yep.
Thomas.
Yep.
I love
Um,
it, dude. That's really great. Thank you for sharing that. And for people listening, it's well worth your time. Give it a listen. Thomas has a lot of wisdom. You also have a lot of fun guests on there. And
yeah.
you also have a lot of fun with it too. There are some
Yep.
episodes that are definitely a lot maybe deeper, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you think Pursuit of Calling, and of course, I mean, there's going to be some depth to it. But there's also some episodes with different guests or whatever that are just, they're also deep, but they're just fun and funny
Right.
too, right? So it's a
Yep.
good balance, a good mix. If you're on a drive into work or something like that, it's a great use of your time to check that out.
For sure.
Dude,
And
so
then you can also reach out like on spot on Instagram on my the podcast on pursuit of calling on Instagram,
okay,
and you can also follow me at Thomas Carney, my own personal Instagram as well.
there we go. Um, Now let's get into maybe some of the meat of what we want to talk about tonight,
For sure. Yeah.
um, which is a little bit about your story. So
Mm-hmm.
obviously, I'm encouraging people to check out your podcast, but it's all interrelated to you, right, and who you are as a person. And so, thank you for giving kind of that overview on who you are. You're a tech guy, AI, you love all that. By the way, I can't log into my AI. I logged myself out and I can't. Yeah, I don't even know how to reset my password. So we should link up at some point. You can help me with that.
All right.
And so you've got all these different, irons in the fire, a lot going on. But
Mm-hmm.
behind the scenes, you also have had quite the journey over the
Yep.
years with some health things, and you've talked about this
Mm-hmm.
on your own podcast. But this is where I kind of want to let people hear your story, navigating and walking through some pretty confusing, challenging, difficult, painful things in your
Mm-hmm.
life. And so, to the degree that you're comfortable, could you just share a little bit of the journey of your health that you've just been navigating and that you've been on?
Yeah, for sure. So I have a medical condition, chronic movement disorder called muscular dystonia, and for the majority of the time that I've had this condition, I didn't know what I had. I just
Yeah.
knew that I just knew things hurt,
Hmm.
and so like just some backstory on that. I started in my hands, and I wear these compression gloves just to like kind of help with the pain in my hands. Started in my hands, so I just wore compression gloves, and that was like maybe 2-3 years of that,
Yeah.
and eventually it went to my forearms and my shoulders. Now it's like it can get into my chest, my face, my legs, and pretty much everywhere.
Hmm.
um and it's well and muscular dystonia in itself is this erroneous like muscle contractions. So
Hmm.
like it's not like for me at like I will say from the outset, like there's multiple forms of muscular dystonia. Like mine,
Yeah.
luckily, I don't have like writer's cramp is form of this dystonia, but like and then there's dystonias which will complete will cause a person's head to like kink to a side or called cervical dystonia. There's dystonia like, of the limbs that would like literally twist and distort the limb.
Hmm.
Um, and so like I honestly like I've talked with a couple of people just on Reddit about their experience in this like dystonia subreddit, and like I feel
Hmm.
enormously blessed, but I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. I
Yeah. Yeah.
but no, the I'll say like from the beginning, like in my with my experience with dystonia, I um my experience with dystonia and pain like pain every day, if we're being honest, um was we're gonna get into this a little bit later, I think, but there was a lot of questioning, a lot of doubt,
Mm-hmm.
and with my faith, and like,
Sure.
but yeah, but like, I mean, a lot of doubt, and I don't know. God saw me through, and I'm still every day. It's every day is a battle. Every day feels like it's something a little bit different,
Yeah.
but but also it gets easier. And I think the podcast helps me be able, like I was saying before, it helps me be able to provide other people who are dealing with, even if somebody else is dealing with something hard in their
Sure.
lives, I can speak through something that is probably and like harder than a lot of people go through, and
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
if we're being like and be able to speak from that and be able to help people through these other hard times, like without devaluing what they're going through, and just being like, this is like how I'm going through, this is what the mindsets I have, this is where I put my faith in order
Yeah.
to keep them, in order to um keep my head on straight and not go insane, essentially.
Yeah, no, 100%, dude. And again, for those who may not be super familiar with what that is, I mean,
Yeah.
it's had very real, tangible impacts on your life, like even
Oh,
your
for sure.
day
Yeah.
to day life. In terms of, I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but even just in terms of what you're like comfortable or able to physically do, right?
Right. Yeah. There's like, you don't know, like, there's a lot, like, the thing with my condition, it doesn't look like I have a problem if you just look at me.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and that's probably was one of the hardest things to figure out, one of the
Sure.
hardest things to navigate, because I'm usually a guy that I'm a guy who likes to help. I'm a
Yeah.
guy who likes to sorry, you're gonna see me cry a lot. I'm an emotional
No.
person.
This is yeah,
But
100%.
the but the I remember there were a few times, multiple times, like, and this is not at the fault of anybody. There were just sometimes that even at Amplify, that people were like, "Hey, Thomas, can you help me with this table? Can you help me lift this up?"
Yeah.
And I have to be like, "No, sorry, I can't do that."
Hmm.
And without them, and like they don't know, and
Yeah.
they look at me like they kind of give me a weird look, and they're like,
Sure.
"Why not?" And I like I say I can't. I actually I'm just dealing with some pain, um and now at this point most people know, but like that I
Sure.
know, but like but that was the hardest thing to kind of think around, and like to learn to like be okay that people didn't understand,
Hmm. Yeah. Huh.
because you can't really expect them to.
Yeah. Sure. 100%. And sorry, I might have missed this when you were sharing in the beginning, but
Yeah,
when did this initially start?
sure. It's been going on for about 6 years. Like I think it's 5.5 when I look back at my. I was trying to figure it out earlier, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, about 5 6 years when it started in my hands, and then 2 3 years later, 2.5 3 years later, it's when my arms, and it started to spread.
Yeah. And at what point in that journey were you able to put a name to it and get the official, like, is it a diagnosis?
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be within like the last year.
Yeah, yeah. And so again, we've known each other for about 5 years, and
Yep.
to this day, I will say for anybody listening, I can affirm all that because we've done ministry together basically the entire time. Um,
Yep.
Again, Thomas is a tech guy. I am not, so we're great in ministry because the strengths are very complementary. Um,
Mhm.
but you are such a, you love to serve and you love to help, and you're that person who it's like, oh, if you need anything, you can ask Thomas. And so I can
Mhm.
imagine, right, and kind of getting to see the progression, how
Yep.
hard that is, right? It
Yep.
probably wouldn't be hard for somebody who never wants to help, right? But for somebody who does, like you, that's a huge
Uh,
deal, right? And so,
it's a
oh,
hit.
go ahead.
It's a hit to like pride also.
Hmm.
Because like I was like, oh, I it's like because like these are the things I used to be able to do now. Like now, it's not even that I can't. It's just that I shouldn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, because like I could help somebody with a table and just like live with the consequences of like
Yeah.
my arms hurting afterwards.
Yeah.
Um, but it wouldn't be a smart thing for me to do. And it's like for so like to kind of take that hit to my pride and be like, I can't always be that person um that I thought I had to be. I thought that's
Yeah.
how thought that that's where a lot of my value I felt was whenever I physically helped somebody out.
Mm,
And um not to keep like promoting my own podcast, but like there's
yeah.
like I can still use my voice, and that's the kind of like
Mm.
that's like my favorite thing about it is that like I don't have to do something physical in order to help somebody out. And that's I think that was like one of the bigger things that kind of like grew out of this. It's like there was tons of growth that came out of this.
Wow, wait, dude, I just had this thought, and so
Sure.
my next question for you that we can dive into here a little bit is, okay, being on that journey, uh, and again, we know each other through Amplified Church, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about like how your faith has been integral in this part of the journey, and also the highs and the lows, right? The doubting
Right.
moments, all that. But I just had this realization based off what you said,
Okay.
and we talked about this last night at church at our Bible study. That while Paul was in prison and
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes beat up and literally in excruciating pain, um, the point last night was despite his pain, he realized, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
still have a pen, right?
Yep.
And it's from these pain filled moments that we see that we now are the recipients of these letters that Paul wrote thousands of years ago that we're still blessed from today, right? And so he found
Mm-hmm.
purpose just by saying, okay, what do I have? I may not be able to move around, I might not be able to do all this. And so the idea was like, will you pick up the pen in the midst of pain? And as you were just sharing that and saying, oh, I still have my voice, I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that is living what we talked about last night, which is
Yep.
you're
Mm-hmm.
walking in physical pain. You may not always be able to do all the things or should do all the things, but you're still picking up the pen of the podcast or the pen of pouring into people, right? You've raised up people. Like, I hope you're okay with me sharing this. We can cut it if not. But you always did all the tech things, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
always physically were the person doing all these things for the ministry. But now I've got to see you raise other people up to do the physical things, and you're leading them, and they're better because of that. And so I don't know. I just had that picture in my head that I think is so beautiful of you're literally navigating all of this, but you're still picking up what you can, and you're still
Mm-hmm.
seeing God work in it. And I just think that's really encouraging. I hope for somebody listening,
Yeah.
and for you, because that's
Mm-hmm.
amazing. So if you want to talk
Uh,
about that,
can I t-
go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah,
can no, like I've talked actually brought I bring this up a lot. Not not I haven't brought it up on my podcast, I don't think, before. Maybe if I have, it's been a while. But
yeah,
like one of the first times I realized that God was actually using my pain, because for a while I didn't really see a purpose in it.
yeah,
Um, was whenever I asked, David, first time I asked him for help with production on a Sunday,
yeah,
because I wasn't sure if what I was signed up to serve in, if I was going to be able to do it,
mm,
and or if I should. And I knew that he previously had said that he was interested,
yeah,
that like maybe it'd be cool. So like
yeah,
I asked him on Saturday. He said on Saturday if he could help the next day, and he said yes. And like, and I just see it through my like through like me not being able or not like sure if I could do this one thing. I was able to bring him into the fold, and now he serves on production on Wednesdays with us, and
yeah,
he's a part of the leadership there. And like he's my go-to guy.
yeah,
like
yeah,
I like that was the first time of like actually being able to like speak and like be able to like uh, grow a relationship with him even more through this production, through spending more time with him. Like that wouldn't have happened in the same way if I
yeah,
was already always thinking about how I had to do everything myself.
yeah,
That was like whenever I learned I had to ask, I was like, okay, like you have to like you can't do everything you used to be able to do, so you have to actually ask for help now.
yeah,
Like that was
yeah,
a lot of my pride in was like, oh, I like if I don't do it, it's going to be done wrong. That was like a lot of my mentality.
yeah,
And like I remember even through college, I had that mentality in projects, but that's a tangent. but but the but no, I was like, if I don't do it, it's going to be done wrong, and as I wouldn't ask anybody for help. And then whenever it came to the point where I had to ask somebody for help, I saw the real benefit in, like, the true benefit in that, because it's not
Yeah.
just that I asked him for help. It's that, like, it wasn't just for me anymore. Because I was serving out of like a sense of, um just like like I can do this thing, and other people see me because I'm doing all these things, and out of my own
Yeah.
strength, and now I can see how the house is better for having more people to be able to do the things I could have done on my own.
Yeah. 100%. Dude, that is so cool. And that's one story, but there's several,
There's a lot.
right?
Yeah,
That,
yeah,
that
for
we could
sure.
point to that are like, man, and it's that theme that although that's the whole situation is not one that you would have desired or brought upon yourself, you can look and you can still say, how can I make the best of this? How can I
Yeah.
still move forward and pour into others? And I think
Mhm.
that's so cool. Um, Speak a little bit to the faith component there, right?
Yeah.
The what role has your faith had in navigating those highs and lows, but ultimately staying grounded in that? How has that helped you?
Um, I think I said a while ago that I had a certain mentality around this early on, and I don't know if this is right or wrong. I just know
Yeah.
that, like, I remember saying to a group of people that, like, it felt like I was in a position where, it that the what I was going through at the time, and could either make or break my faith.
Hmm.
And I got some weird looks. And but like I honestly meant it. I was like, I know I'm in a position where other people can go through these hard things, and this is where they fall away because they don't see any true healing, and or I shouldn't say that, but they
Yeah.
don't see the healing they want to see,
Sure.
and like, because like I had experienced times where I saw other people get healed around me, and then got prayed for healing over myself, which I had multiple times before, and then it didn't happen for me, and that's where a lot of that discouragement came in,
Sure.
and like my faith though, if what I've learned kind of through this process, my faith, or like Jesus is like really just he like it's my foundation, and like the foundation, like you hear, like Jesus is the lighthouse that kind of brings you back,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
brings you back for, and like whenever you're in the dark. And there's a lot of times whenever like I was in the pits,
Hmm.
like I was I mean, you're gonna probably ask me about community later. I'm gonna but I'll say
Yeah.
that, like, um there was one time where I just got off the phone with a doctor who pretty much told me again for another time that they didn't know what was going on,
Mm-hmm.
and I hung up the phone and got into the fetal position and cried.
Hmm.
And right after that, I after I got up off the floor, I called Andrew Vergato,
Mm.
and because I know that's like cause I knew I could, and I called him, and he just listened to me talk about like how stressed out I was, and he prayed over me. He was working, and he just put his one earbud in and just like listened to me talk to me while he was doing his thing, and
Yeah.
prayed for me. And um the reason I bring that up whenever you ask me about faith is because that's who I believe God put he's one of the many people that God's put around me
Yeah.
in or in order to like in order to thrive in what I'm going through,
Mm-hmm.
because like I don't know, like my faith is like I said, it's the foundation of like what I believe my pain is for.
Mm.
My I used to think that, okay, if I just get some prayer, if I eventually at some point, if I get prayer for healing, eventually it will work, and eventually I'll be healed. And
Mm.
then I've kind of shifted my mindset to if God didn't put me in pain, because pain is the result of sin being in the world,
Yeah.
and God didn't take it away from me. Well, then there must be a really good reason for that. If God is good, which I believe He is,
Yeah.
then there's a good reason that I'm still in pain.
Yeah.
And so then it's up to me honestly, I believe it's up to me to put in the work to work out that purpose.
Yeah.
Work out
Yeah.
work out that purpose, and use this, what God's given me, for His given me, or is keeping me in for whatever reason, for His good,
Yeah.
for His glory. Because,
Yeah.
like, what would be the point otherwise, right?
Mm.
Like,
Mhm.
if I'm just here sitting in pain, like, and just wallowing in self-pity, and just like feeling all bad for myself, like, what's the point in that? It doesn't help,
Yeah.
like, it doesn't help me, and like kind of brings other people down too. So I'm
Yeah.
like, it hurts me, hurts everybody else around me, so like, why do that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that's a great perspective. I'm actually really glad that you went there with your answer, dude, because you've certainly had to wrestle with that
Yeah.
entire that entire facet of your life, I'm sure. But
Yep.
you've landed on this rootedness in Christ that is not going to be taken away despite the pain that you're in, and I think that speaks volumes to people, right? Because
Mhm.
um, and this will just be a little bit of a side tangent of mine that I'll say.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
I think we hurt people a lot within Christian spheres whenever we imply that uh, if you pray, you will always be healed the way you
Mhm.
expect to be, right? And we
Yeah.
place this expectation. And I'm not saying, like, I don't want people to mishear. I fully believe that God has the power to heal, and I've just
Yeah.
seen God do too much to believe anything else, right? Like, He can, He's able, but sometimes what you said is so important for people to know, which is sometimes, yes, God is not sending the pain your way. He is not the author of anything bad. He is not evil. He is a good, loving Father. But sometimes He will use what we have to go through to be a testimony to people who are going to
Mhm.
walk through the same thing, right? And so,
Right.
it scares me a little bit, I would say, whenever we imply to people, oh, it'll always go that way
Mhm.
whenever you pray, because it tells people, okay, well, do I not have enough faith, right? Like, if you
Mhm.
don't see the healing right away, is there something, there are two things people can think. There must be something wrong with God, or there
Yeah.
must be something wrong with me, right? And that's just not true. The reality is
Mhm.
what you said. We live in this fallen world, and it breaks God's heart that there is pain and that there's suffering.
Mhm.
But because there is, sometimes He will allow those things to draw more people to Him. And so, dude, thank you for your maturity in that answer. Because
Yeah.
will you continue to receive prayer? Yeah. And will you continue to believe God's able to do this? Yeah. But it's the Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego answer, right? Which is,
Mhm.
even if not, we're still going to be
Yep.
faithful, right? And so I just think, man, that's amazing. So your faith has certainly been a grounding point. Speak a little bit more to maybe the community aspect too. So you
Yeah.
believe in God, but then talk a little bit about just having people in your life.
Dude, like, if I didn't have the people that God's put around me, if I didn't have that foundation in my faith, and wasn't seeking Him out, I wasn't seeking Him, I I wouldn't. I'll be honest. I'm gonna be honest. I wouldn't be sane right now.
Yeah.
I if I like that's the honest to God truth. Like, I would
Yeah.
be, like, I literally would probably be insane. And the reason I say that is because the amount of weight it lifts off of me
Yeah.
whenever I'm around people who lift the weight off, who lift me up, and only want to see me succeed, and want to see me healed,
Mm-hmm.
and pray for me to be healed, and pray over me, and even help me practically, right?
Yeah.
The biggest one of the things I can't do for long periods of time is drive.
Yeah.
And practically speaking, there's always 9 times out of 10 there's somebody. If I need to get somewhere, there's somebody that is willing to take me there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like and it's not out of, and it's, people aren't doing it out of guilt. People are
Hmm.
doing it out of a willingness to serve.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's like the biggest piece of, like, when I think about community, like I that's kind of where it's kind of, when I think about the community that's around me, that's when it particularly pertains to this condition, this what I'm going through, this trial. That's what I think about. I think about how much weight is just lifted off as a result, because a bit
Yeah.
by myself, I by myself, like I mentioned this on a previous episode of my podcast, and like I I envision myself as a singular pillar, like trying to hold up a
Hmm.
house,
Hmm.
and the wind would come and knock it over. But then whenever there's a bunch of other pillars around me, like around me, holding up and creating a firmer foundation,
Yeah.
on top of the already firm foundation,
Yeah.
like, then you're like, you have a lot more of a, like, I don't know, a lot more. You don't waver as much.
Yeah.
Like
100%.
you're still not perfect, but like it's makes it easier. It makes it so much easier to get, like, through a day, especially whenever you know you can just reach out to somebody and talk to them, like I did with Andrew.
Yeah. 100%, dude. To anyone listening who, uh, you're honestly, every single person, whether you feel like you need it or not, you do need community, right?
Mm,
And there will be moments and seasons that we all need to walk through where we will need people. And so, um, yeah, I would just encourage you, if you don't feel that you have that, get connected somewhere, right? Get plugged
mm,
into a church, a group, some way to connect with like-minded people who will encourage you on, have your back, support you.
yeah.
Because that's huge, dude. I wish I could remember the name of this. I was just in Arizona the other week, and we saw these trees that are humongous. Like, they're these
Mm,
massive trees, and their root system is, I've heard of root systems where they intertwine, but that wasn't these ones. They're so connected that they're actually one organism. And so all
oh,
these different roots grow from one thing in the ground, and they sprout up as all these other trees that grow to be massive, but it's all actually one structure, not just interwoven, it's one.
yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's what the church is supposed to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
We all have one root in Christ. Not, I get the interconnectedness, I get that parallel and that analogy, but really it's like, oh my gosh, we should be just one in Christ and then all growing, right?
Yeah.
Together though. And that's community, that's strength, that's where power comes from, right? Um, so thank you for sharing that. Uh,
Mm,
Also, if there's anything you want to say, I'm gonna just give you an open question at the end. So be
yeah.
you can share anything there. But I would also just like to hear generally, and maybe we've already answered this based off of your last two answers, but I don't know if you have anything else for it. But like, generally outside of, or maybe still within faith or community or outside of that, how do you just keep a positive mentality? Because this is the number one area where I was like, wow, the other week, sitting
Mm,
there with you, seeing your whole journey and also seeing you grow through this in joy, right? And
mm-hmm.
grow
Yeah.
in a positive outlook. Like, how you doing that, man?
um, this is like an interesting. Like, this is one I'm like. It took me a second. Whenever you asked me that like when we were meeting up the other week, like I was
Yeah,
like, kind of said what I said earlier. It's like, oh, keep the faith,
yeah,
and which is like, as the only thing I could think to say. But like, it's honestly part of it is just it's one. It was like learning to have that the healthier outlook on my situation, like kind of what I
mm-hmm,
was talking. It's
mm-hmm,
like the perspective of whether I'm what I'm in. Like, is there a reason for my pain or not?
yeah,
And like I'll repeat myself and say, like, my, like, whatever you're going through, whether it's mental or physical, like God's going to use that for His good, right? So
Yeah.
like there's a purpose for my pain, and that brings
Mm-hmm.
me a lot of joy, actually. I'm like,
Yeah.
isn't that
Yeah.
cool? Like I'm able to, like, I like the analogy of a toolbox. Like we're all given a particular set of tools,
Mm-hmm.
and not everyone is able to do the same job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like a plumber is not going to have the same tools as a carpenter, and if you try
Mm-hmm.
to have all the same tools in his toolbox, they'd probably just gather dust and not be used.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wouldn't know how to use them. Well, we might be able to, practically
Yeah.
speaking, but
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But there's but the other way, like, honestly, it's like it's getting more into my scripture and into the word, because
That's good.
I I'm just gonna I have my favorite some of my favorite verses is in Philippians, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it's one of my favorite books. And there's Philippians 4:6-8. I'm gonna read that real quick.
Yeah.
Um, it says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus."
Mm.
Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And the reason I'm
Yeah.
getting so emotional is because that those words, like, I had um the words like in that list. um I'll read them again. Noble, right, pure, lovely, admirable, excellent, and praiseworthy. I had those written down on my window in my old place in like
Mm.
a dry erase marker,
Yeah.
and I was like, if I was like spiraling or if I was having issues, I kind of look over there and like check myself,
Mm. Yeah.
and but like are my thoughts lined up with what he says,
Yeah.
and are my these thoughts true? Are these thoughts praiseworthy? Are these thoughts excellent?
Mm-hmm.
And like the answer was no. Then like I can't train myself to give it to God. I
Mm.
think that's a
Yeah.
big piece of it, is learning how to give that pain to Him,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
it's not mine.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I don't, like, I personally don't like say, like, I say it more than I like to, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll say like my dystonia,
Mm.
like my muscular dystonia, and like it's like it's not really mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
like I like I don't want ownership over that.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um I I want like I want to use it as a tool in the toolbox. So like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can use it. You can say I don't know. I think people could combat me on that in a practical and like probably theologically. I don't know, maybe, but I think people could like kind of challenge me on that mindset. But like there's like I don't want ownership over something that's hurting me.
Mm.
Like over
Mm-hmm.
over ownership that's pain. But I will take ownership over I will. And I don't even have ownership over the purpose, to be honest. I just have ownership over I have ownership on what I do with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where I like kind of like I don't know. I like that's where I find my joy. I find my joy in knowing that I can actually use it for good.
Yeah.
And
Thomas,
like
that
it's
yeah,
that's that.
that's amazing. That's so great. I really like the toolbox analogy. I think that that translates so well. And thank you for reading that verse too, because man, it's almost in a way like I guess a litmus test, right, of our
Yep.
thoughts. Something Craig Rochelle says a lot. I know you listen to Craig, right? You know what I'm
Yep.
talking about. Yeah.
Yep.
He'll say it's really important that we think about what we think about, and I've always really liked that, right? And his point is exactly what you just said. So you're a mini Craig, I guess. But you're saying the same thing, which is, hey, here's what God's word says to
Yep.
dwell on, think on, contemplate. And are my daily thoughts lining up with that? And I think that is so, so practical for everybody listening, right? Their situation might be different. They might have an
Mhm.
entirely different context, but think about what you think about, right? And make
Yep.
it line up with God's word. Um, so, dude, thank you for sharing that. What would you
Yeah.
say? Because even from just some of the metrics from the podcast, most listeners are younger, right? And
Yep.
probably these up and coming young people who want to lead, who want to do these things. But the reality is, all of us will face pain, right? All of us will
Yep.
have challenges. What would you say to somebody younger coming up about the ability to endure well and the idea
Mhm.
to move forward into their future despite some opposition that they might face?
Do hard things.
I love it.
Uh,
That's good. We can leave it
I
right
could.
there. Do hard things. Don't let them
Yeah.
take you out, right?
Yep.
Press on anyway. I like that. I like
Uh,
that a lot.
yeah.
Good.
I would say like I know we're a little over your time, but if I can elaborate on that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
um, the reason I say I do hard things, it's proven that if you do hard things every day, like in your routine,
Yeah.
like it will translate to other areas of your life,
Hmm.
and like in ways that you don't even really need to think about it,
Yeah.
because like one thing I do, because I'm a crazy person, I take a quick cold shower every morning.
Oh, you are a
Um,
crazy person.
I would hop in for like a minute or two, and like this morning it's like 45 degrees outside,
Cool.
and it was rough. But I was
Yeah.
like, I don't know, I don't even think about it anymore. I just hop in, and whenever before I would like walk around my room for 5 minutes, and
Yeah.
be like, okay, I had to hype myself up. And now it's
Yeah.
just walk in, do it, get out. But like
Yeah.
it's the reason I say do hard things, because then whenever hard things that you don't because you can do the hard things that you expect, and then whenever the hard things that you don't expect come, you're already prepared.
Hmm. Hmm. That's good.
And yeah, and it's like you won't be prepared 100. Like you can never be prepared 100%, but you'd be prepared way more than you would have been.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, that's a bar right there. Do hard things you can't expect so that you can be prepared for things you don't. You said it better, so people can rewind. Um, I'm gonna steal that for a message.
Do it.
No, I like that a lot, dude. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's great advice for people. As we kind of wrap up here, any parting thoughts about any of this, or maybe something you wanted to say that we didn't get to? Um, yeah, anything on your mind?
I mean, I'll say to any of your listeners, like, if anyone is dealing with something hard, which is like mental, physical, or just life wise, like, I would love to have a conversation with you,
Hmm.
and like to pray with you, and even if it's just like a message back and forth. But like, and I just say that because I feel like when we talking about toolbox, I feel like I have a toolbox to be able to help a particular set of people,
Yeah.
and like and I don't know. I feel like I can help people that are going through hard things. I'm going through hard things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's but yeah, that's honestly the only thing I can really I only really have. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you want to reach out, like, I can even give you my email or whatever. But like
Yeah.
or but yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah. What's your email?
Um, just do my just do the pursuit of calling email. It's just pursuit of calling at gmail.com.
Yeah.
Um, I just say that one because there's a lot less coming into that inbox.
Yeah. Yeah.
that way,
100%.
that way it won't get like hidden away in all of the multitudes of emails I get every day.
Yeah. 100%, dude. Um, hey, thank you for caring about other people.
Yeah.
And it's easy and stuff to get inward focused. And
Mm.
I think, man, we could have. Oh my gosh, we could have gone into all that. Just the power of selflessness, right? Through all that.
Yeah.
But thank you for living that and even ending on that note. I think that's so cool. So again, I just want to say, for people listening, Pursuit of Calling on every platform. um, and on Instagram, pursuit
Yep.
of dot calling, right? And then
Yes. Yep.
yeah, and then the email, you can reach out there as well. So, um, dude, I've loved every guest. This has maybe been it has been, I think, the most vulnerable, transparent conversation. Not that anybody else isn't or hasn't been, but it's just another level, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
thank you for your openness, and
Yep.
I truly do believe that this is, hopefully giving hope to somebody. That you're inspiring through your story and just sharing that. And so I
Mm-hmm.
know while it's deeply personal, it's also deeply powerful, right? And so just thank you for saying yes to coming on and for being a part of this, and especially for hitting that topic, because we could have talked about tech or stuff that you get and I don't, right? Like we could have done a bunch of stuff, but thank you for coming on to be so open and transparent about this journey. You're an inspiration, and I appreciate you, man.
Yeah. Well, appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for having me on. This was great.
Absolutely. And for everyone listening, here we are right at a half hour. We're not out. No, kidding. Thank you for listening to all 51 minutes of this. And I hope it's brought value to your life. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat somewhere. And I'm sure Thomas would love to answer those too. So go ahead and drop a question. If you got it, reach out to Thomas. But until next time, thank you all for listening. And we'll see you back here. Thomas, thank you again. We love you guys. See ya.
See ya.